So there's a gentle explanation of this in Lama Zopa Rinpoche's free book called How Things Exist. There's an elaborate explanation of this in Jeffrey Hopkins' book Meditation on Emptiness, particularly the chapter on the diamond slivers. So this is called the Fourfold Analysis, and it's a very traditional series of thoughts to go through, but incredibly useful. If you can particularly spend some time with this first one, identifying, because when we're calm and relaxed, the self is quite quiet, right? But as soon as someone turns to you and accuses you or praises you, it roars to life. So if you can get it to roar to life while you're sitting here quietly, then you can interrogate it gently, But if you interrogate it too aggressively, it dissolves and goes, no, I never said I was inherently existent. No, I'm nominally existent, it's fine. I don't have afflictions. Yeah, I know better. So if you go in too hard, too fast, the sense of inherently existent self cringes and falls to the shadows again. So you have to approach it like a spy. So first get it to arise, then say, okay, so you're there, no problem. How are you there? One of two ways. Okay, so first way, how would that be? See that it's absurd. Second way, how would that be? See that it's absurd. And you don't collapse into nothingness. You go, therefore, inherent existent self is impossible. Not no self, no inherently existent self. So it's finding the non-finding. Do you have some questions? How did it go? How did it go?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm not sure I'll be able to phrase it, but I'll try. Let's say there is no inherently existing, okay?
Mm-hmm. No inherently existent.
But the I exists from moment to moment, okay? Changing.
Sure.
It's like you have a hand.
Mm-hmm.
And basically you don't have a hand because the hand is made up.
Yep. A hand is a good example, yep.
And the hand hurts, okay? I have a wound and it hurts.
Sure.
So what is the conclusion? Because the fact that there is no inherited existing hand from its own side doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt.
There's no inherently existent pain either.
What?
There's no inherently existent pain either.
There is pain.
Is there from its own side? This is the thing, right?
It's not from its own side.
Right. No, but listen.
I'm asking, I'm trying to, because it came up very strong in meditation.
Yeah, so the question seems to be things lacking inherent existence doesn't seem to have any impact on the fact that there is experience. How can you frame your question more simply?
Maybe the way you put it, because basically we're trying to unfold this thing and say, okay, it just build out of so many things that don't cling to it, don't think it's there. It should not control you. It should not lead you. You exist, but you're not really existing.
Okay, so it sounds like you don't understand why we meditate on emptiness.
No,
It sounds like you understand kind of in a way how to meditate on emptiness, but not what that conclusion is supposed to do for you in your daily life. What is it supposed to do for you understanding that you're empty?
I understand it, but
What? Yes.
I understand, but it's came up in a way that isn't it just words that we're saying in the sense that at the end of the day, the palm of my hand, it does exist and it does hurt. So I can put it. You don't really have a hand,
Yeah, it's so you're using the example of okay, so you have this, you can say this is a hand, but as soon as you point to it, you are pointing to a part which is made of parts, which is made of parts, and one of those parts, say, experiences pain, for example. How does knowing that there are parts made of parts help you with the fact that there is pain? And then you have to go into how pain does not exist from its own side as pain. For example, from the perspective of a child who is experiencing a certain pain for the first time, they don't know how significant that pain is until you tell them. Right? If they skin their knee, they look back at their parents and go, is that bad or is it good? Is it okay? Right, no, but listen. You're jumping steps, okay? So you have to be patient and hear the steps, because your intelligence goes faster than your experience. So make it into micro steps, okay? So just take this example. It's not a perfect example, but the example of a child looking back to say, should I cry at this pain or not? They don't know if it's a pain bad enough to cry, sometimes without looking at their parents. And if their parents say, oh, honey, oh, no, then the baby goes, ah, right? And if the parent goes, oh, whoops, that was an owie, here's a Band-Aid, off you go. They go, okay. Sometimes, right? It's not a perfect example, just bear with me, okay? But the idea is that pain does not exist from its own side, meaning that our labeling of it as pain, as suffering, as I don't want this, doesn't exist in that way, right? What is painful for you might not be painful to someone else. They might label it as pleasure. Lots of people like to exercise. I hate it, right? They like the feeling of that movement and that energy. They like it, but they don't frame it as pain. And you have to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, right? You're not going deep enough. Right? There's parts, and the experience of understanding parts is useful to a certain extent, but you have to go underneath and underneath where you decide to attribute significance. You think that the significance exists from its own side, like saying this is pleasure and this is pain. They are sensation that you have come to label as pleasure and pain and held to them and now believe them, and they reinforce themselves. They're not self-existent, right? It is not pain from its own side. You've labeled it pain, and so it is. Someone else could label it as something else, and it would be that for them. And the problem is that our labeling processes then reinforce themselves. We're like yelling in an echo chamber, saying, stop yelling, as we yell, and it bounces back at us. So you just have to go very, very subtle into these things. Yeah, and remember context, because we already understand how things exist within a context, right? We understand that concepts of good and bad exist based in our family of origin and how we were brought up. And, we might agree on things like stealing is bad as a general societal construct, right? But then your specific experience of what is stealing is very specific to how you were brought up, right? For some people, taking a parking space that isn't theirs isn't stealing, right? Because it's there and no one is using it and they're not going to get in trouble for it. For another person, it's not freely offered to them and so it's stealing, right? There are many, many things that make up a label, yeah? Grasping an inherent existence means you think the label is self-existent, that it's telling you what it is, right? Instead of we telling us what it is. Right? So to say that this is a bowl is no problem, but grasping at inherent existence means that we think that it is telling us that it is a bowl from its side to us naturally, which is not a problem with things that are inanimate, but we think that of people. They are telling us they are bad and dangerous from their direction, not the label I put there on a collection of qualities that I've been habituated to see as dangerous, some of which might be true and some of which might not be might be false, right? But our label feels equally true whether we're correct or not, right? Our feeling of danger, our feeling of vividness is identical whether we have the right information or the wrong information. But grasping at inherent existence means we take the vividness as a criteria for truth. Do you understand? So when you're walking, it's the classic tale, you're walking down the footpath and the light is bad and you see a coiled rope and you think it's a snake, you are as afraid of that coiled rope as if it actually were a snake. The fear is the same. Whether it's actually a snake or it's just a rope that you think is a snake, the fear is the same when you see it, if you've labeled it snake and dangerous. You agree, right? So whether you're accurate or not is not the point. You will give yourself that experience. Grasping at inherent existence says that it's giving you that experience, not you're giving it that significance, which then gives you that experience. So with the self, it becomes very subtle because we land on points of vividness and take that to be self. And as soon as we take that to be self, there is the association of inherent or independent, which means there is other. And as soon as there is other, there is suspicion and paranoia and competitiveness, even if at a very subtle level. Yeah? And as soon as there is suspicion and competitiveness and paranoia, there is all sorts of room for attachment to those who seem to bring you safety and comfort, and aversion to those that seem like they're going to harm you. And that push and pull is all operating within your mind and reinforcing these negative habits. So if you didn't have grasping at the self, you wouldn't have grasping at the self of others either. If you didn't have grasping at the self, there would be no one to defend. Right? Which isn't to say that practically speaking, you wouldn't do practical actions, but it wouldn't have the affliction with it. Yeah, it would be like defending your hand against your foot. Yeah.
Which means there would be no one there to suffer.
No one there to suffer, indeed. Means there would be no one there to suffer. Exactly, yeah.
You mentioned before the application of this meditation to daily life.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say more about it? Because, I
Yeah, you want me to talk more about how to use this in daily life? Yep. So if you're looking at the object of negation, the object of negation is the inherently existent self. These are words that only have meaning if you unpack them, right? To negate means to deny, right? To say isn't. Inherently existent self isn't there at all. That's the pretender, right? Inherently existent self doesn't exist at all, not even nominally, and yet that is where we place all of our identity. So if we actually thought that the self was merely labeled on the aggregates and we're just hanging out with the idea of the mere I, we wouldn't cause any trouble. But we actually believe in the pretender. The pretender isn't there even a tiny bit, right? But the pretender does all of our work for us, right? It creates so much problems for us in our daily life because as soon as you have points where you land your identity, you are in conflict. Okay? So you're at work and someone steals your idea and gets credit for it. Is any idea yours? Right? We really think that it is. We really think someone stole our idea. What nonsense, right? All thoughts are original and no thoughts are original. Yeah? All thoughts are the results of many things coming together and arriving in this place, this collection of circumstances. And that's not to say that a difficult coworker doesn't need assertive management strategies. It means that when that happens, you don't feel like something's been taken from you because no one is there to take it from. Yeah? But if you feel like they stole your idea, we are so angry, like something's been taken. Yeah? There is no taking and no someone. Yeah? And so as soon as you relax into that, you go, all right, well, if it's a good idea, it's a good idea. Let's see if it works. If it's a bad idea, it's a bad idea and it doesn't work. It's just an idea. It's just a thought. It just arrived here in this part of the network. Yeah? And so you relax, right? Because it's not about you anymore. Yeah, someone is angry at you, you realize that your karma is ripening is one condition, their karma is ripening is one condition, and then there's a million conditions which are like the weather and the time of day and how they were brought up and their projections and yada, yada, yada. And everything that happens to you isn't really about you, right? And how you think of others has very little to do with them. That we're just talking to ourselves all the time, basically. We're dancing with our delusions. Yeah, and it can actually make you have a bit of space. Yeah, space for new choices, yeah. So you use this in your daily life as often as you can because it will interrupt attachment, aversion, and ignorance, just like that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, it's a good question, and the question is, what if we respond to everybody and everything with perfect peacefulness, equanimity, and love, and because of that, then they feel like all the bad things they do are okay, and they get away with it, then there are no consequences. Isn't that a danger?
Even if I'm sure he doesn't think he is doing no good, but like that karma.
Sure. But the thing is, is that skillful means is not the absence of common sense, right? In Buddhism, we talk about skillful means, and that means working with the physical conditions as they are, but it's with the motivation that is different. There's a very famous mind training slogan in the 7-point mind training, which is maintain your natural behavior, but change your attitude, right? All of our life wisdom is accessible when we're calm, content, and unafflicted, and it's clouded when we're agitated. So the fact that you can let things go, the fact that you can remain peaceful or come back to peacefulness when you've been triggered is a good thing. Your worry that it makes you passive, maybe, or it's not communicating that part of what the other person did wasn't okay, that's a normal response, but you can say, I wish you would have responded differently for these reasons. And you say that with an unafflicted mind, he might actually hear you. If you say it with an angry mind, he just hears your anger. But this is the thing, right, is that you're actually in a better position to confront him if you are calm. Because then he hears your love through the criticism, right? When do we actually hear criticism? When can we take in someone else's criticism? It's when we feel loved and safe and not judged, right? Otherwise, when people criticize us, we just hear that and we go, oh, to hell with you. Or we feel terrible and take it on way too much and it becomes a whole other issue, right? Implode or explode. But if someone just genuinely says, I love you so much, when you do this, it has this effect and I worry about it, then there's a conversation, right?
Yeah, but
Yes.
even that, even if you have the best attitude in the world, you can't be sure that the other side will take that criticism.
No, and often they won't, right? Most people don't, right? Most people don't take criticism well. And so you're quite right that even with the best of intentions, the best of motivations, the most skillful means, still it won't work, which is why we want to be a Buddha. Right. This is the point, right? Is that we don't know other people's reactions because we are not clairvoyant. We do the best we can from a stable mind. It has more chance of success.
I think about what I
Yeah.
do, and he
Yeah.
what he do.
Yeah. But this is how you use emptiness, right? Is that you realize the agent, the action, the object are all empty of inherent existence. None of them are self-existent, right?
I can also ask
Yeah.
him if he's ready to listen.
Yeah. But this is the whole point, is that you have a million options available to you when you're calm. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, listen to your common sense when you feel these things come up. But know that part of the problem, true talking, as my teacher would say, is that you don't listen, right? You skip steps. And I know there's a language issue, but it's not really the language issue. Yeah, you skip over steps to the end, and it's actually the steps are more important than the end. If you listen to the steps really, really well, the end will show itself naturally. So if you're jumping to everything lacks inherent existence or everything's empty of inherent existence, well, that's stupid, that doesn't make sense, or how does that help me get through the day? It's because you didn't do the steps that got you there. So if you go through the steps, see, the fourfold analysis doesn't even end with, therefore everything is empty. That arises naturally at the end of this analysis. I wrote it here just because we need things spelled out, right? But that's actually where you arrive to naturally if you sit with this well.
Isn't it Nagarjuna, like when he negates for time, like not this?
Oh, right. That's the extremes of production. So it's another way to get to the same point. Nagarjuna, yay. Yep, for sure.
But
it's another kind of, it's another scholar that, what is this, where is this meditation?
This is from the Buddha. And then many other scholars have interpreted it. So Nagarjuna's had things to say about this, Satisha's had things to say about this, the Sanghas had things to say about this. There's a really excellent description in Lamrim Chenmo, the special insight section of the Lamrim Chenmo. It's really excellent for going into detail about this. So you'll get many people's commentaries on this basic format. And there's also, I think you're maybe thinking of the four extremes of production, that things don't arise from self, things don't arise from others, they don't arise from both, and they don't arise causelessly. Yeah, so it's a different list, but it gets you to the same place. Yep, gets you to the same place.
And the third and the fourth, maybe.
Hmm?
If one with or same as then, if separate from or different then. ...
is the most important part. Yeah. Here's the most important part. Yeah. Then you're like, wait, oh. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so each of these you find the lack of finding. You're like, well, nope. Well, nope. Huh. Right? It's the conclusion. Yeah.
You said, okay, that like to sit with the experience of not finding.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate about this?
I have not realized emptiness perceptually, but it would be as if you had a grand space of infinite possibility open up to you.
Oh, that sounds great.
Sounds great. Yeah, let's try. Yeah. It's more than the quiet place. It's the potential place. Yeah, unformed potentiality. Yeah. So, okay, let's dedicate. Page 34. Page 34. And really, anytime you get a really solid question, and you guys are asking really good questions, if you can sharpen it into its simplest form and ask people like Ling Rinpoche. If you ask too long a context to get to the question, the translator gets boggled, or they get lost in context. So if you can sit with your context and try and sharpen it into a good Geshe question, that's going to be so effective. And I often have a little list going of things I need to ask, the boss. And it's fun to kind of get yourself clear enough to find out what is my core question here. Often then you find out the answer. But even if you don't, it's going to be clear enough that actually it might work. So for sure, hold the question or keep the question if you feel unresolved. Just because I can't answer it doesn't mean it's unanswerable. All right, just keep asking. Yep. Okay. 34. Ready? Jantu semjo rinpoche ma ke panam ke gyoji ke panyam pa me pa yang gone gondu pelwa sho garia rawe koe jinkam dir pendang dewa malu jungwei ne genre ziwan tenzing gatsoi Shape site badur ten gyuji. And Lama Zopa's prayer on the previous page. Absul Jan Jing Jam Gong Galway Tenzing Kyom Belway Gunzu Du Pose Joson Gwe Le Mondu Drum Bada So Du Je Gondu Shap Ten Shu. Okay, remembering the emptiness of the three spheres, agent, action, object. Laila Tov.